Hey everybody, I want to thank you for stopping by the show today. We have something that's happening during this podcast that's never happened to me before, and it's definitely going to be a funny little tidbit at the beginning. Also, we have Rob, who's going to talk about how motorcycles saved his life. So make sure you stick around and check it out. Hey everybody, I want to welcome you out to the show today. I'm really looking forward to this interview today. And, I think I got some of the camera issues that I've had, happening figured out. We'll find out this episode. Hopefully you won't have to see a good edit in the middle. I know it happened with Wendy. I had to mix in some stuff. So it also happened with Chris at the end of his, and we're going to figure that out. So, I've only known you for a short time, but we've been around each other a couple times, riding, meetings, stuff like that. And, I'm really looking forward to hearing your story today. And, I don't know your first name. I always call you by your last name. I'm sitting here thinking about it. So
Rob K.
There you go. I'm sitting there going, we always call you by your last name, and I'm going, oh shit, dude, I don't know your first name.
That's great.
You know what's funny about that?
I knew that too.
Is in the because you saw my face going, fuck, dude, what's this guy's name? What's funny about that is in the club that I'm in, you gotta carry a note in your pocket that has all your official name and all that, because years and years and years ago there was a bad accident and the one guy went down, and they all went to the hospital, and they were like, I'm not going to say his name, but they were like, yeah, we're looking for, and they were like, oh shit, dude, we don't know. So I was just having that moment right there. I'm introducing you, and I'm like, because I don't want to call you by your last name.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're all good. All right, man. I apologize for that. I asked you to come on board because, I know some of the guys that you run with that you ride with and stuff like that, and I know that you're heavy into the recovery thing on your own end, and that you're a perfect mix of what we're looking for the show. You're an independent rider. You don't have any club affiliation. You're just a guy out there riding, doing your own thing, that just happens to run a program. And, I think that this is the perfect type of interview for people out there that are watching that think that, everybody I'm bringing on here's a club, and that's not the case, man. I don't want it to be just club people. I want everybody, Unfortunately, you got the big people, sober people, clean people, and then you got people that ride, and then it keeps getting smaller and smaller. But, so why don't you... give me a little backstory about yourself, how you got to where you got before you figured out your life, and go from there, man, and we'll kind of steer the ship.
Sounds good.
Cool, man.
So I started out as a child, man, very young, started using, it was so long ago we called that green leafy substance grass, you know what I mean? It was that long ago, and I got a couple of years on you guys, some of you guys. Anyhow, I started just having fun, man, all in the name of fun, and it really was. And I'll tell you, my motorcycle and my two-wheel riding started out on mini bikes, and I was just telling you earlier about this contraption I had was a Schwinn with a Briggs & Stratton. It was an old World War II surplus engine that we rebuilt and put on this Briggs & Stratton, and man, I loved it. Like, anything with two wheels is good for me, and I never put down anybody for riding anything.
Yeah.
When I got on the road finally, I wasn't allowed to have a mini bike, and my father said, if you can get a job, you can have a mini, you can get yourself a mini bike, you get a job. So the next day I took the guy's paper route that had the RUP mini bike, and I took the mini bike. He fronted it to me, and I was riding it the next day, and man, my dad was not happy. But you know what? Because I came from people that didn't ride motorcycles, man. I was the black sheep of the family, and I loved it. I remember seeing a guy on a bike, and it was probably a knuckle or a panhead, because it was about 1963, 1964. I was 5 or 6 years old, and I saw me had a wife beater on, and I said, I want to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
Like, I was just always attracted to that. And once I started riding them, 19 years old, I had a Honda 350 with a king queen seat and high bars and the twisted sissy bar on the back, and I was off to the races, man. $150, and I was riding.
Nice. There you go.
So, you know.
And you're talking old school, man, with the king and queen seat and all that.
That's
awesome.
On a 350 Honda, you had to see it, man. And like I said, I was the shit. I had arrived, as far as I could tell. You know, it was cool, man. You know, I knew what I wanted. I wanted a Harley, but you got to start somewhere.
You know, that's kind of similar to me, though. Like, when I was a kid, there was at the top of the hill. I lived on the bottom of this hill, and at the top of the hill was this club, and it was like somebody told me recently it was an Italian American club, and I don't believe that that's what it was. To me, it was a bar at the top of the hill, and there used to be a bunch of bikers and I don't know what club they were, but they all used to hang there, and they would come ripping down the street past my house, and I was like, oh man, I want to do that. You know what I mean? And to me, it was like, I got goosebumps even talking about it.
Right.
It was like one of them, you know, you mimicked your bike. You're riding your bike like, I'm one of those guys. And then, you know, like, I could not wait to get on a bike. And, you know, I didn't have a mini bike or anything like that, but there was a guy that lived down the street from me that had a Honda GL 550. And he used to let me borrow it. And I would just go ripping around on that thing. And I look back at that now and go, you are a complete dumbass. I knew nothing about riding, and I was out on the streets. Like, I could have killed myself or somebody else, you know. But it's cool, though, that you got the bug quick, little kid.
I did. And then, and you know, and unfortunately, right around that time, I got the bug to use and use. And, you know, I was... you know, it was that culture. It was 1970. There was, you know, there was real LSD coming from the other side of the country, and I was before my 12th birthday. I was, you know, I was using.
Yeah.
And I was using. That was the days when you could get prescription speed, and I loved it all, man.
Yeah.
Loved it all. Got, you know, and peace, love, and happiness, you know, and whatever, and you know, I just fell right into it, and the things that we did under the influence, like right from the get-go, you know, stealing cars at 11, 12 years old. I was a watch out for somebody that was going into a house, a few guys that went into this house, and you know, they caught us. And from the beginning, though, I knew I couldn't be a snitch, so I just kept my mouth shut. But, you know, and I kept getting slapped on the wrist. And, you know, my drinking just took me, because after that, you know, I discovered alcohol. Yeah. Somewhere between 12 and 15 years old, and, man, it took a hold of me.
Right.
Took a hold of me. At 15 years old, I was having blackouts and had no idea what that was. You know, wake up the next day talking to your friends, trying to figure out what happened, piecing things together. And I certainly didn't think it was normal, but I certainly didn't think it was a problem. It was all in the name of fun. We're just partying, man.
Yeah, that's how I was, man. And to be honest with you, dude, I actually did think that was normal. Because, you know, I was young. So I started drinking the summer after 6th grade, so that puts you like 12, 13-ish. And I was blacking out and doing all that right off the bat, too. And I thought that was normal. I thought that was part of, you just drank too much. You probably shouldn't have drank that much. And then, you know, come to find out years and years and years later that, dude, that ain't normal, man. That's not, like everybody else that's drinking doesn't do that. I wish I was a normal person, so that's, it is what it is.
Yeah, as they say, in the circle of friends that we run in, once you've turned into a pickle, it's hard to go back to a cucumber. And
Yep.
I was thinking about this the other day and what I might say here, and the one thing that was in my mind, there was only one thing I always only tried one time, and that was Mad Dog 2020, man. During the day, cutting school, because right away everything suffered for me, and it was certainly my school suffered, and just barely graduated high school. But I was a classic underachiever, and it was all around my drinking and using, and but I did always have the motorcycle outlet, man, and motorcycles saved my life. I'm gonna tell you.
You know what? And you said that to me. So we talked about that prior to us doing the recording today, man. So fill me in on that. How so?
Well, if I gotta tell you, I had a friend of mine. He was my dealer, and we were involved in some high level stuff, and he had stopped drinking, and he had 6 months, and he was going to meetings, and he was. I got to a point where I had to stop. Things weren't good, and the relationship I was in was going to fall apart if I didn't stop, and I knew it, and I was 31 years old, and by that time I had 6 DUIs at the age of 19 in a blackout. And it's never easy for me to say, because I always hear people say, what if I killed somebody, or thank God I didn't kill anybody. And actually I did. At the age of 19 in an automobile accident in a blackout. And the guy that was in my car had to have his parents pulled the plug 10 days later. So,
damn.
Needless to say, it changed my life. It escalated my drinking from that point. So I was 19 to 31, drinking to kill myself, basically. Kind of like an eye for an eye. This man was 22 when he died, and I thought I shouldn't live past the age of 22. Kind of like a reverse eye for an eye thing, and it was pretty bizarre thinking when I look back on it now. But at the age of 31, I hadn't had a drink for a month, and this guy took me to a meeting, and there was 17 motorcycles and a Honda out there, 17 bikes and a Honda, and a lot of bikers, man. And I went, wow, I can fit in. And I'll tell you, 30 some years later, 32 almost exactly, because it was July 10th that I stumbled into my first meeting, and I can tell you that I don't have continuous sobriety, but it occurred to me about 8 years ago that motorcycles really did save my life, because if it wasn't for those motorcycles, if it wasn't for those bikers hugging each other, talking spiritual stuff and talking about riding.
Right.
And I didn't have a driver's license at the time, but within 6 months, I had another bike. My other bike before that I had taken apart because I couldn't ride without a license. I didn't want to, my first Harley Davidson. And, so it occurred to me.
Okay.
More recently that motorcycles truly saved my life. And a little over 11 years, 11 3/4 of a year ago, I came in again after being out and when we call it out, I was out running and gunning, as you guys would say. And
Yeah.
I was drinking for a year and 3 days and thought I'd just come back.
Right.
Didn't work that way. Took me 25 months and about 5 or 6 different sobriety dates trying to get back to where just trying to stay sober.
Right.
And I finally stopped. I hadn't had a drink in 11 months, but I was using opiates, and I called my sponsor, called my son, and called another guy that was in another fellowship, the other fellowship, as they would say, and he came to my rescue, man. Guy that I rode with, again, motorcycles. And we're going to ride to this meeting, and I'm parked in front of my house on a bike that I just bought. I can't make my second payment because I don't have the $400 to make the payment. I'm 3.5 months behind on my mortgage. In my driveway, looking at my house, going, "This is the real deal, man."
Right.
If I don't, so again, I'm going to lose the bike because that's got to go first because I got to have a place to live, and then I'm going to lose my house. And I like this house. It was the third time I had bought it, and I was planning on keeping it, and here I am, like I said, 11 and some years later, and the house is paid for. Remarkable. Nice. I paid off my house and things that I never thought I'd be able to do, but those are the things you can do when you stay sober. And the bike was paid off, of course, too. But again, motorcycles.
Right.
Saved my life. I always thought that was a ridiculous sticker when I saw it at those rallies. Motorcycles save your life. That's a ridiculous statement.
Yeah, but you know what? I can definitely relate. And you know what? I can also relate to the fact that, you didn't lose everything and still got sober and or clean, sober, whatever. Doesn't matter. There's this popular misconception out there that you have to lose everything and then you can change your life around. And that's not the case, man. I didn't do that. I still was able to keep, my house, my bike. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I didn't have a bike back then. But I was able to keep my house and my car and my job and all that other stuff hey, I did have a bike. It doesn't matter. The point is that you don't have to lose everything in order to get to that point. And I think that that's one of those things where I know when I first came in and I went to my first AA meeting, and I said to the guy that was kind of like pushing me to go to the meeting. He was working with me when I first got sober. I said, "Look, dude, they're going to ask me to raise my hand and say something or whatever, but I didn't lose my house. I didn't lose my car. I didn't lose my job. I got to keep my wife." And he was like, "Dude, you don't think there's other people in there that did the same thing?" And I was like, well, no, because like I was under this impression that was part of it, that you had to lose everything, and that's not the case, man. So if you're out there and you're trying or thinking about getting clean, sober, whatever, change your life around, and you think that that's what's got to happen, it doesn't, man. You can still turn your life around and still keep all that stuff. So I'm glad you brought that up, man, because that is a huge valid point. And the irony of that is I went to that first meeting, which was a complete shit show to begin with. I sat in the parking lot and I smoked cigarette after cigarette, drinking my soda, and I watched people walk in this church, one right after the other. And there was a lot of people. And I thought, okay, no big deal. But I waited to the very, very last minute to walk in that room. I walk in the church. There's nobody. I don't see nobody. I don't hear nobody. And then there was this little old lady. And I said, "Ma'am, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here." And she said, "Oh, honey, you just need to go up those stairs and walk through the door." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And I'm walking up this long set of stairs in this church. And it occurred to me that lady thought I was questioning whether I needed to be at that AA meeting or not. But I was actually just questioning, is that the room I need to go to? And then I get in there, and it was a goddamn anniversary meeting, and there must have been 100 people in this giant church. And when I opened up the door, it was like the Animal House where the white dudes walk in the bar and the record stopped. Because I was like, oh, everybody stopped and turned. And then I sat down. This lady told her story. And her story was exactly like mine. Wow. She didn't drink every day, but when she drank, she binge drank. Blackout. I'm like, holy shit, just like me. She was a vice president of a bank. Still has her job. Still has her house. Still has her car. Still has her kids. And I'm going, Okay, just like me, man. Like, I didn't lose none of my shit either. But then they were like, oh, man, this is their first meeting here? And everybody turned around and looked at me because it was an anniversary meeting. Everybody that was there used to go there. They knew I was, and I was like, oh, man. And I didn't raise my hand, but, you know, I was just like, whatever. But moral of the story is, here I am thinking, oh, well, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. And then this lady's the speaker for the night. Amazing story, by the way. She was phenomenal. But I'm like, okay, man, just like me.
Thinking you were unique. A lot of us do that.
Right? And then here you go. God or whatever gives you a little, you're not, man. You ain't special, dude. You're just like a bunch of other people in this room.
Yeah, another misconception, and why I'm thinking of it, I'm going to say it because I belong to this group that's called Many Paths to Spirituality is the name of it, and the three guys, there's only four of us that are home group members, and three of them are, how do I put this? Three of them are Jesus freaks. They're not really Jesus freaks, but, you know, one of them's into organized religion, and one of them's not, but they're all Christian-based.
Okay.
And I'm not a Christian, and I'm not an atheist anymore. When I came here, I was an atheist. I was raised that way, and that's just the way it was in my family, and come from a really good family, but we didn't have religion. We didn't have God in our house, and, you know, I came to find out that that's okay. And a lot of people, much like when I share and tell them that motorcycles saved my life, I'm sure that half the people in the meeting think how ridiculous that is. But if they hear me explain that, they understand it a little more. So I can tell you, if you come in here and you don't have a God, an organized religion, you don't need any of that. All you need is the willingness to stop using or drinking. And you need to have that own personal bottom, like what you were talking about, Buck, where we don't, you know, that woman told your story. You were there for a reason to hear that message. And when I was there at my first meeting and saw those bikes and bikers, and these guys are incredible, by the way. They started this meeting, there was 10 of them that started it, and only one of them ever picked up. The rest of them stayed sober. They became productive members of society, and unfortunately, it was close to 40 years ago when they started it. So a few of them have died, have passed on since then, but the legacy of that group is pretty unbelievable. And again, and I'm from South Jersey, from that area, but so I guess I'm going off. But I guess what I'm saying is, you know, you don't have to conform to anything necessarily, particularly a God or a power greater than you. If you have that, you know, and if you come around and you don't have any of that, it's okay, man. Yeah. But eventually, you know, I read things in our literature that says, you know, stuff like the spirit of the universe, man. And I latched onto that. And, you know, I have family members, and I got to tell you, the last 11 and a half years, I've been through some incredible stuff, man. And having a power greater than me and people that pray for me, because that's what a lot of people do. And I don't pray, but
I thought that's the same thing, though. You know, I thought that it was a bunch of Jesus freaks, and, you know, that's why they were hugging and all that other stuff. Because, you know, look, I came in and I had a giant chip on my shoulder, and I wasn't really the huggy type. And, you know, you walk in the door and somebody's trying to hug you, you're like, yo, whoa.
2 years before I let somebody hug me.
You know what I mean? I don't do that, dude. Like, I'm not that type of guy. And I don't mean that in any kind of, like, you know, sexual way. I just mean it as in, like, you know, I wasn't the like, overly, you know, cuddly, happy-go-lucky type. But I also had the same problem, though, with the whole, I wasn't an atheist. I would say I was probably more like an agnostic. And, you know, my thing was, like, anti-church. And I was only anti-church because, you know, as a kid, we did a couple different churches or whatever. Like, I didn't belong to a particular church. But we didn't have church in our life per se. And, my father, though, was raised Catholic, went to the Catholic church, went through all this stuff that he had to do. And then, we moved away from the area. And then when my father passed away, I was 19 years old. My father had never been on an airplane, so he actually got on an airplane. They flew him from Pittsburgh to Trenton. Passed away, dead. And they had the funeral here in Trenton. And my mom went to the church that he went to, and they wouldn't do the ceremony because he hadn't been to church in X amount of years, and he didn't put money in the till and all this other shit. And I just was, man, like that was the end of the rope for me with church. My mom wound up having to get another priest or whatever from a different church to come in and pay him to do it and all this other stuff. So to me, that was like, a huge turnoff for me. And I got to be honest with you, I think it probably took me about 8 months before, like, of coming to meetings on a regular basis and doing my thing, before I really kind of gave into that. And then I just realized, look, man, there's something bigger out there that steers the ship, and it ain't me.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter what it is. The guy that I was working with at the beginning was like, look, dude, it could be a toaster, it could be your dog, it could be whatever. You make it whatever you need it to make it. I just kind of just went, you know what, dude, there is something bigger out there that's just steering the ship, man, because you know what? When I try to steer the ship, that's why I'm here. If I was able to steer that ship, I wouldn't be here. That's the bottom line.
Well,
and then, somebody had also, I had said that one time, and they went, well, yeah, that's part of it, but then you also have the allergic reaction to alcohol. And I went, okay, well, that makes sense. I hope that at some point, anybody out there that's trying to get clean and sober at least tries and sees that it's not really that way. And I don't know how many people out there that maybe never did it just because of that. Maybe we're going to be the guys right now that are going to spread that out there and put that out there, and somebody's going to come across this video one day and go, oh, really? Okay, cool. Maybe I will give it a try. Who knows?
Absolutely. And, and I talk about those Christians that are in that one group of mine, and I heard this from one of the guys that started the group, was a Buddhist and a very respected man that was a member and was at my very first meeting. And he simply would say that I believe that you believe. And man, that works for me. And it's funny that you were talking about somebody telling you could have a toaster, you could have I've heard the doorknob. Everybody's the doorknob. You can, whatever kind of God of your understanding. And of course, it doesn't need to be an object like that. But for me, I remember it being a tree in my backyard. And so the odd thing about it is that I became a Christian. I got baptized and confirmed. I was facing prison time, and I knew if I got baptized, confirmed, and married, or particularly that I would get married, it would look, it couldn't hurt.
Right.
It couldn't hurt, and it helped. It did help in the long run. And I did all that wholeheartedly did that, and really wanted, and really was chasing a God of other people's understanding is what I was doing, of the woman that I was dating with and that I was engaged to and her family. And they had lost a son, incidentally, on a motorcycle, and they got real involved in their church. So I bought into all that, and I want to tell you that we got away from that. Her and I did get married. We had a motorcycle wedding, and it was cool. I was with a group of guys. We had started a clean and sober club, and we were all together, and they all came to the wedding, and it was really neat. But I kind of, after that and going through a divorce with her, I shied away from the organized religion. I felt like she got custody of the church, It's her parents' church, so I wasn't going to go there anymore. And I felt like I got dropped, but even before that, I was pulling away myself because it didn't feel natural to me. And now that's been 22 years since that time, maybe 22, 23 years. And since then, I have this understanding of a higher power, which is really the Mother Earth and the power of the universe. And I'm really comfortable with it. And I think at times I talk about it and people say, no, no, you got to have a God. And I've heard that a lot. My sponsor said, you have to have a God. And then he would quick say, of your understanding, he would say to me, a power greater than you, of your understanding, because he knew he had to word it that way for me.
Right.
And you know what? He and I rode to Sturgis, clean and sober. I've been to 8 rallies in Daytona from 1992 till now. I've been riding over 40 years. I'm one of the fortunate ones, blessed ones. And but it all, back in the day, I was riding my Sportster with a hand. I remember covering my eye because I was seeing double riding my Sportster. So something, a power greater than me got me through all that to get me to where I'm at today, and to get me to open my eyes and realize that the life that I was living was just wrong, man. It was just wrong. And I started to say I had, excuse me, other family members in the program. I have a sister and with a lot of time, and my brother died with 13 years sober from cancer. And, the remarkable thing is we were all able to be there for each other when we went through those times. And, I went out to Sturgis and I got married, and I've been divorced since then. I have been through some stuff in and out of recovery, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
See, but you know what? You're older now with time and in your recovery, and you have tools in your toolbox to handle those bad situations. So, I think that was one of those things. When I first got sober, I thought, well, what's going to happen when the shit hits the fan and something bad happens? And look, man, there's no guarantees. Nobody runs the perfect program. But if you have good people in your life around you and you got tools in your toolbox, you're going to make it. You should make it. Let's put it that way.
Got a better chance.
There you go. That's
got a much better chance, man.
Because I got a brother that, Sparks, who was on the first video that I did for this channel. And that guy, he made it through within a year, I believe it was. His father passed away. His aunt passed away. And then his sister died while they were on a trip in California on a bike in front of him. And if that dude didn't drink and go do drugs, I got no fucking excuse. Bottom line.
Right on.
I don't mean to curse, but I have to emphasize that because, look, I know your problems are your problems and they're on different level than other people, and you don't compare yourself to other people or whatever, but I look at any type of problem I have now, I don't have any issues with having thoughts of drinking, but I think to myself, there's no good reason. And to be honest with you, dude, your life is not going to get any better by doing it. It's going to make it worse. I don't know anybody that was clean and sober, had time under their belt, drank, and their life got better. Or went back to doing drugs and their life got better. It doesn't work that way. It might numb it for that couple hours of your night that you're, dwelling on that, but the next day is not going to be pretty.
Absolutely not. And I can tell you that. And I didn't tell you about my first relapse. It was a 3-day relapse. And I did come right back. And it didn't get a chance to get bad, but it was bad enough in those 3 days.
Yeah.
Because immediately I was thinking at that time, I had 6 DUIs. I'm sober for over 7 years, and I pick up. And immediately I'm thinking, well, I'm going to drive my truck. I'm going to get done as fast as I can. I'm not going to have lunch because I'm going to stop at this bar and I'm going to drink some Heinekens on an empty stomach so I get the full effect. So the point that I'm making is I was an alcoholic, and I was thinking like an alcoholic. After being separated from booze for all that time, I was still thinking alcoholically. They say that your disease is doing push-ups, waiting for you, and when you pick up, you go right back to where you were, and
Yeah.
I know that is real. That's real. I never drank from the time I got up, but one morning I was drinking about 10:30 in the morning. I was finishing off a keg of Heineken, those cute little kegs of Heinekens you get, and this was about 14 years ago, and a woman I was spending the night over her house, I was staying with her, and she said, "Can't you just wait till noon?" And like right away, I knew I had the green light with this broad. I'll stick it out with her a little bit longer, because as long as I don't get caught before noon,
Yeah.
I can drink around her from 12 o'clock on, and I'm not going to get any grief over it. And that's alcoholic thinking, man. That's just...
Yeah.
And that's we're different. We are definitely different, and I'm just blessed that I had that first guy bring me to my first thing, and and I was around for a couple years, and I was indicted for some stuff that I was, like I alluded to, I thought I was going to go to prison, and because I got better at what I did, my side job. My side job as a dealer. I got better at that because I was in recovery, but certainly shouldn't have been involved in it. But, so, and over time, I ended up with 3 felony convictions, and the crazy thing about it is, I know through a lot of that I wasn't a good person, but I knew deep down inside in my core that I am a decent person. And, I've been able to, fortunately, as they say, well, your higher power or God, whoever you like to call them, kept you around long enough so you can spread a message or do whatever you do. And I'm fortunate enough that I get to work with other recovering people, and people trust me with their, with their recovery.
Right.
And, it blows me away, and it's really gratifying, and that's how we stay clean and sober, by giving it back
Right.
to the other people. And a big part of that for me is, not tell the guy, look, I have a motorcycle. I don't know if I can sponsor you, but kiddingly, but most of the guys that I do sponsor ride, and they end up. And my sponsor rode, like I said, we rode to Sturgis. I mean, that shit was beyond our wildest dreams. And John was my best friend. He kind of filled in after my brother died. He was kind of like my brother. And, but anyhow, a big part of my recovery is based around motorcycles still, man. I love to ride. I got 2 of them now, and, my biggest decision tonight was it's going to rain, so I'm not bringing the dresser because I just got it detailed. Like, I really don't want to go home and wipe the whole thing down and risk having road dirt on it. I'll take the old Softail, and
You got sober people problems now.
I do, man. I do. I had to dump money into both my bikes. They both needed stators in the same month, and you know what? I did that. And I still do things like that and put my motorcycles and my recovery first. And I got to pay my taxes, and I'll figure that out. But those are my, those are my big issues today. You know, I've got it. I've got a world of good, man, and I just really, truly want to be the man that my dog thinks I am. When I come home, my dog just gives me the sweetest look, man. I'm everything to her, and you know, it's a good feeling.
Well, you know, it's good to hear your story because I don't. I guess because I've known you for I guess a year or two now, and you know, from what I've seen of you, you're always the you know, one of those recovery people that's it's like you're doing it, you're in it, blah blah blah. So to hear the prior stuff that I didn't know about, I'm just like you're talking right now, and I'm just like, wow, I didn't know any of that. And you know, look, that's you know, I wouldn't have heard that unless I heard you speak, or you know, that's because that's something that we don't sit around and talk about. Just so you know,
We don't talk about what fuck ups we were.
You know what I mean? Like, just so people out there that don't know us, that you know, we don't sit there. Oh, you remember this time and blah blah blah. Like, you know, we'll share a story here and there, but like, so for me, I didn't know that. That's awesome to hear those stories. That I finally got to hear some of that, and you know, it puts it in a different perspective for me. You know, and look, I think that I talked about this with Freddie was, you know, because he had talked about relapse, and you know, there's people out there that are relapse is part of recovery and blah blah blah. I don't know if that's necessarily true, dude. I think that's, you know, it's part of some people's story, but that ain't part of recovery.
My sponsor has 48 years. Came to his first meeting and never drank again.
Right. You know, that's part of your story. That's not part of recovery. There's a what's the saying about you know, you drank that drink a week before you drank that drink, something like that. Like, you know, people are usually
you relapse prior to your
you're right,
to your
man.
drink.
Like, you thought about that a week before you actually put that in your hand, and why? So now when people talk about that and they ask about relapse and stuff like that, I go, well, what were you doing that led you to that point? You need to rehash that in your head and go, okay, well, what did I do different this week? Did I not go to meetings? Did I not do this? Did I not call my sponsor? Did I not talk to somebody? Did I not pick up the phone? I mean, there's thousands of different things out there, but you didn't use the program. That's the way I look at it. You know?
Didn't open your toolbox.
Right. And look, I give people that do relapse a ton of credit, because, you know, I haven't experienced it yet. Hopefully, I never will. And
I hope not.
And I don't know what the outcome would be if I did. And I don't want to know. I don't want to think about that. But to me, that makes you a badass for coming back, knowing that you tripped up, but you knew you had to come back. And you know, that's big, man.
For guys like us, it's the only house left on the block. You know, and if I and I got to tell you, when I picked up and was out for that year and thought I was just going to come back, my brother and sister who were in recovery kind of shied away from me, and they lived in different parts of the country, so it was easy enough for them to do that. But we weren't talking every day or twice a week like we were before. And when I was coming back, and even though I was struggling for those 25 months, I used to say it was about 18 months until I did the math, and my date's 10-10-10, and I tattooed it on my leg so I don't forget. But you know, when I finally got to that point where I hit that bottom that I needed to hit, you know, it brought my family closer too. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but I guess what I'm saying is I'm where I belong. There's no doubt about that. I'm where I belong, whether there's a God of your understanding or my understanding, or everything happens for a reason, and that happens to me all the time. not just occasionally. I have spiritual experiences. Sometimes I'll have 5 or 6 in a year. Sometimes I'll have 5 or 6 in a month. Sometimes, I mean, it's just incredible, some of the things that happen. And it's like I knew it was going to happen, or I had some kind of a feel about, why I went to that meeting. I really don't want to go there, but I'll go, and then I'll realize why I was there. Whether it's a new guy that needed to hear what
Right.
somebody said, and I needed to witness that so I could talk to him afterwards. And
Or somebody says something in a meeting that just goes, bam, light bulb.
well, usually everyone I go to,
Yeah.
usually everyone. There's something there for me to hear.
Yep.
That opens my heart and my eyes just a little bigger. And it's remarkable. And like I'll tell you again, the Christians that are a member of that group are 3 of the most beautiful people, and I love what they offer to the group when they talk about their God, because it's actually, the meeting's a little bit different than most. It's, we welcome you to talk about your God. And that's when we have the speaker, that's what we tell them. And they always say, well, how long can I speak for? And we're like, well, speak for half an hour if you want. Give
Right.
a little time for the people. You speak as long as you need to speak. Because sometimes, man, if you get cut off too early, the people don't get to hear what they need to hear.
Right. And that's where, so I talked about this last week, and then I also talked about this with this whole podcast thing. Okay. I've had some people say, man, it's long. Sometimes it's hard to watch the whole thing, and I get that, man. But look, you can always come back and watch it. Watch it where you left off. I'm not going to shorten these podcasts to meet statistics or to make it more palatable for a viewer, because to me, what happens if I shorten it up and we cut off the last half hour of what I would normally do, and we leave out something that might have been a gem that you needed to say? You know what I mean? Like, for me to shorten it for statistics or for the pleasure of other people so they can, watch it all in one shot and make it shorter, that's robbing you. That's robbing the person that I'm bringing on to speak, to do that. And I don't want to ever do that. Now, the second part of that is I've been to a meeting, and I don't remember if there was, I'm not sure if you were there or not, man, but I got people sitting in behind the scenes right now. We're at a meeting in Bordentown, and they had paddles where they were like, if you were talking too long, they would put the paddle up. So there was a guy that was with us that's an old school, AA guy, and he just kept going, and they were getting pissed off, and he was like, if I have a valid point to bring up, why would you stop me in the middle of it? It's not like he was rambling. Look, man, there's people that are rambling. Mm-hmm. They just want to talk about their cat or whatever. And look, when I used to bitch about that when I first got in, and my sponsor was like, look, man, that's what that person needed to say. You listen to it. There's going to be something in there. And I'd be like, man. But look, the bottom line is, you're not going to raise a goddamn paddle when I'm in the middle of a valid point, just because your time limit's up. I mean, that's bullshit, dude. I just don't get it. Look, if that's how you want to run your meeting, that's fine. That's just not the meeting for me. I just won't come back. There's meetings out there for everybody. Like you just said, you got a meeting where, it's more spiritual, more, you talk about your God. There might be some people that are like, hey man, that's not for me. Well, then you don't go. Find another meeting. There's 100 other meetings going on.
Absolutely. There's over 400, I don't know now, ever since the pandemic, but over 400 in Area 45 alone, which is South Jersey region, from like Tom's River and below Trenton all the way to Cape May and Camden County, where I'm from. And, and I've seldom been in a meeting where I couldn't, where I felt uncomfortable enough that I had to leave. I've left 2 meetings in 32 years minus a couple years that I was out. So in somewhere around 30 years, not in a row, of course, as I said, but I've left 2 meetings and one of them was because the guy that was spoke at the meeting, that opened the meeting and spoke, kept sharing in between other people, and I had just had enough with it. He was rubbing me the wrong way, and I actually had to leave. But mostly, there's something for everybody in every meeting, and like you said, you can pick and choose afterwards. You know what? I really don't like their format.
Right.
I'm not going to go there anymore. And
You don't badmouth it. You don't, put it down. You just don't go back, man. That's not the meeting for you. Like, I'm sure that meeting's still going on, and that's fine. It's just not for me. Like, for me, not that I'm a huge talker during those meetings, but I don't ever want to feel like if I have a valid point and it's going to be more than 3 minutes or whatever their time limit is, I got to stop. I mean, that's you're robbing somebody a chance of possibly bringing up something that somebody else in that room needed to hear.
so I was at another meeting, and this woman had 4 days, and she was cut off from speaking at a clubhouse. Just happened to be a clubhouse meeting, and she was cut off by this guy, who I later find out does that. And she was sharing about it at yet another one of my home groups, because I have two. And the guy in the front cut her off as she was sharing about being cut off. And it was so ironic, and just, I was embarrassed for him. We spoke with her afterwards. I was embarrassed for the group.
Yeah.
I've been cut off. I'm long-winded.
Yeah.
I got a long story, man. My war story and my recovery. It goes, it's long, and if I can fill in an hour easy. I've been at meetings where it was just a speaker's meeting and I was the only guy, and what does it take you, 10 or 12 minutes to open it, and then I filled in the rest, and I can do that. But to have somebody cut me off, it's just a crappy feeling. And sometimes it needs to be done because somebody is really going overboard, and perhaps it could have been me. But it still knocks all the wind out of your sail. That's what I want to say. It knocks the wind out of your sail, and it's
unfortunate, man.
Right.
That it does happen, and hey, you just go, hey, all right, man. Well, I'm not going to come back. I'll find another place to go.
And I've been to some different meetings. I've been to meetings on the Grand Canyon, on the rim of the Grand Canyon. I've been to meetings in Yosemite National Forest, where I had to explain to my son that I need to go to this meeting, and he didn't realize what I had been through. And that's when I told him about that accident that I had.
Yeah.
And he was 14 years old. But, I've been to meetings in Key West and a clubhouse in Key West, all over the U.S. And most of them on my motorcycle. So.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, I've been fortunate enough being in the club that I'm in that, I've been to meetings all over the place as well. And then, I actually lived out in Arizona for a short time, and to be honest with you, that was probably my best year of recovery, because for whatever reason, everything clicked all at once there. And, I look at that time that I was out there and I loved it and whatnot, and I had no plans on moving back. It just, the way things work with jobs and stuff like that. And, but you know what? I came back with a completely different attitude as far as my recovery, and that it's I'm very thankful of that. And to go to meetings in different places and see how different areas and whatnot are, and just the new stories and stuff like that. It's very cool to me. And then you know what? That's why for the short time that during the pandemic we had the Zoom meeting, and we had guys from Australia and Ireland and England and all that, and it was just cool to hear other people's stories that are from all over the world. You know, I remember going Dr. Bob's weekend or whatever out in
Akron, Ohio.
Akron. I'm drawing a blank. I'm like, damn it. And you
I'll
know,
fill in the blanks, man. I'm
that
good at that.
whole stadium full of people.
Wow.
Like, wow, that's unreal, you know. And the other part of it too is just being in meetings and having, like, you know, famous people there or whatever, and you realize that, you know, everybody is the same. To me, that was never a thing for me though, because to be honest with you, I was in the music business for a while, and you know, I was around people that were famous, and to me, you know, those guys always wanted to be treated like, you know, a normal person. Don't treat me like I'm a rock star. Treat me like. So it's the same principle. You know what I mean? You go to an AA meeting and there's, you know, Eric Clapton or something that's in there. That's out. If you're in Scottsdale, Arizona, that could happen. He's there quite frequently, from what I understand. So I mean, it's just it's unique. I lived in Arizona, man. I wished I would have went to the Grand Canyon thing. That would have been probably, dude. The first time I went to the Grand Canyon, and I stood there. I gotta be honest with you. I went up to the Grand Canyon. We drove up there, and I thought it was gonna be like National Lampoon's Vacation, where, you know, he pulls up and he's like, "All right, kids, let's go." You know what I mean? But when you stand there and you step over that edge and you look for the first time and you realize every picture that you've ever seen does not mean shit, and you get this like spiritual like feeling that you just look over that and go, wow, man. Same thing happened to me with the Church of the Rock in Sedona. You know, I'm not a huge church
Sedona's
person. I already said
man.
that. But dude, I tell you what, you walk in that Church of the Rock for the first time, and when you walk in it, and at the very end of it is nothing but windows and a giant Jesus on a cross, and the way that the building's shaped or whatever, it's like it kind of forces you to look at that cross. Unreal, spiritual. So, you know, going back to you and you doing this, it was, I wanted to bring you on because, you know, you're an independent rider, your love of motorcycles, and, you know, I know that you have a good recovery story. And I'm really glad you did it too, you know, that you came on board today. And
Me too.
That you did it, because I know you're a little nervous about doing it, and everybody is, man. I tell everybody, look, before we start these podcasts, I would just go, look, man, it's just us sitting in a room bullshitting. We just happen to have headphones on. It's not really that big a deal.
Well, and a microphone in your face.
Yeah, but you know what, man? It's like it is really. I don't set this up to be this grandiose thing, and I got a whole list of questions, and I'm gonna go. It's just us shooting the shit, dude. Just kind of telling our story, not going into crazy detail and whatever. Sometimes we can, you know, depending on who the person is and whatnot. And it's just about just being here and talking about it and really showing everybody that, you know, being in this motorcycle world, you can do this clean and sober and still enjoy everything.
Absolutely, and it enhances my recovery. And I will tell you, I just want to tell you one quick story. My mother was dying. It was 1996, and she drove by my house. I had just bought my house. We didn't make settlement on it yet. We drove her by in a motorhome. We were taking her to Georgia, and I had borrowed some money for the down payment for the house. And I said to her, and she knew, once I sold my motorcycle, I had this beautiful shovel head that I had put together, custom FXR, and I want a FXRS, and I, you know, once I sell the bike, Mom, I'll have that 4,300 for you. And this is a woman that I had to hide my motorcycles from. She was not on board with me riding motorcycles ever. And it got to a point where she knew how important that was to my recovery. And she said, I know how important that is to your recovery. You don't have to sell it. I'm not going to need it where I'm going. She died 3 weeks later. But that's the turnaround in the thinking, and also the people around you, and that ripple effect where you think you're not harming anybody but yourself when you're drinking and running and gunning, as you guys call it, using and drinking. And the ripple effect after you get recovery too it's just amazing. You know, the relationships that I have with my sister and my brother's sponsors. You know, I go to Georgia and I'm welcome there. My brother was my best friend, and he's no longer there, of course, because he's deceased. But his sponsor's an elected official. He's the county sheriff, and he would go out of his way to make sure he was at that meeting, because I would call and say, tell him I'm going to be there. And
That's awesome.
just, you know, and like I started to say, meetings all over, you know, I've made them. And I've been able to travel, you know, I've been in 45 states, man. Not everybody can say that. And I'm, you know, part of my bucket list is to go see the other ones on a motorcycle, the Northwest, and eventually to Hawaii. But you know, I've been to Alaska, and I've made meetings in the craziest places, man. General stores, and
Yeah.
like I said, the rim of the Grand Canyon and Yosemite and Key West, and I don't know, general store in Vermont. That's where that one was. And I went up for the Laconia rally by myself, man. I took a 10-day ride by myself, and I went to where my parents' ashes and my favorite aunt's ashes are in Vermont. And it was the most spiritual 10-day trip I've ever had. It was me and my motorcycle, and just one spiritual experience after another. And some of them I brought on, like going to visit that spot.
Right.
And other ones were just things that happened. I ran into a guy from Florida right near Lake George. I went to a meeting and I looked at this guy and he looked at me, and we knew each other. And
That's awesome.
he was, when my sponsor retired to Florida, he was a home group member at that same group, the Rebos Club. And man, and that kind of stuff, like I said about the spiritual experiences, happened to me all the time. So, and I'm going to tell you, I am agnostic, but I'm still a spiritual being. I know I am, and I like who I am today, and that's remarkable in itself, because
Right on.
I was a real asshole back in the day. And my motto was, you know, ride, drink, and I'm going to cuss. This isn't French, by the way. Ride, drink, fuck. And all I could do at the end, when I hit my bottom, was drink.
Yeah.
So the other things weren't happening for me. Didn't have a motorcycle. So
10 days in Laconia. What did it rain? Like 8 of them?
I never got rained on.
Really?
And I was in New England. I spent 3 days in Laconia and did not get rained on. Again, part of my spiritual adventure. It poured one night when I was in Lake George, and I had never been to Lake George before. And I'll tell you this, I told you the fact that I blurted out that it was 2 years before somebody hugged me in Alcoholics Anonymous, and my friend Tony hugged me, and he had 4 years and I had about 2 years, and he gave me a hug and I received it, which was remarkable, because I'm not a huggy, feely kind of guy either. At least I wasn't at that time. And he's since retired, lives in Florida. He came up, brought his motorcycle, and we took a trip this year back up into New England. And we were able to go to the Wilson house, where Bill Wilson was actually born, in the corner of this. It's now some people got together and turned it back into an inn, but it was an inn there. It was his grandparents' inn at the time. Really incredible.
That's cool.
Feelings, man. And last year when I went there, I took a license plate from one of my guys and hung it there.
Nice.
It's just neat stuff, man. And
I only joked about that too because every time everybody I know that ever went to Laconia,
Oh,
they were
yeah.
like, it rained the whole goddamn
Well,
time.
you know what? And here's the funny thing, and my sister and I know this for a fact, and we pointed it out. I had gloom and doom when I was using, and everywhere I went, it rained. I could be in Jamaica and not in the rainy season, and it would rain all week. And that's the kind of. And since I got sober, I've been ridden in the rain plenty, but not
Right.
like it used to be. It's coincidence, maybe
Right.
not.
So before we wrap this up, is there anything that I didn't bring up that you think you need to bring up on this?
Oh, you know what? I love to tell you that I lived long enough to have 4 grandchildren they haven't seen me loaded, and the oldest one's actually my ex-wife's granddaughter, and she considers me her pop.
That's cool.
And it's pretty neat, man. I got to stand in as her father figure for father-daughter dances, and I have these 3 great grandkids, and I don't know what else I can tell you, but I'm still alive and kicking now, and I'm just and we rode our motorcycles here, me and another friend of mine, a good guy that has kind of connected us, absolutely
Yep.
connected us, and it's wow, I don't know what else I can say, but I appreciate,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you very much for the interview. And, and it is kind of difficult with the headphones and the thing. It's not really, it's certainly not like being in front of 150 people with a microphone. And I did that before and I choked terribly. So I hope that somebody gets out of some of my ramblings from tonight. But you know what? Motorcycles saved my life, along with the various programs that I'm involved in. So that's
awesome.
all I'm going to say, man.
Dude, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. All right, folks.
You remember my name?
Yeah, dude. I can't believe I did that. I want to thank you all for stopping by, and hopefully I'll catch you next week. Thank you. Have a great day.